In this episode, I talk about the importance of trying new things, and I also give an example by adding some colour to my artwork. This is episode 9 of Drawn to Create. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Drawn to Create. This is the podcast where I draw and talk about pretty much anything. And this is episode 9, so we are one away from number 10, the big 1-0, and I've been planning to do a Q&A for episode 10, so if you want to leave some questions down below, then I can read through them, and I will answer them in that episode. And I think that will be a good way to celebrate the milestone. Ask me anything, and I'll answer them. And it's not a big milestone, but it's been 10 weeks of these episodes, and 10 weeks have flown by, and it feels like 2 weeks ago when I was just making the first one, wondering if a podcast or something like this is something that I really want to do, because do I really have any valuable things to say? And who knows, I'm still questioning that, but here we are, weeks down the line, continuing to do these episodes. And this is something that might not appeal to all of you, but I know that there are some of you who enjoy these, you enjoy listening to these, or watching them, seeing the drawing footage on screen. And this is just something that I do alongside all of the other stuff that I put out there on YouTube. I am going to be making some videos for the second channel soon. I know it might feel like I've been saying that for ages, because I have, but I've had to sort of change my ideas a bit, and sort of like, take a different approach, but all of that will be explained in a future episode. But today what I have planned is I'm going to talk a bit about trying new things in your artwork. And before we jump into all of that, I just want to say I apologise in advance, because I might sound like I'm struggling to get some of my words out today, because I've been ill the past few days. I've been having headaches, I've got a sore throat. I've also had some eye strain, but I think that's my own fault. Like, I'm not asking for sympathy here, because, whilst I've been ill, I've also been forcing myself to get up and carry on working, do some drawing and editing and stuff, and so I think I've developed this eye strain in addition with this illness, and so it's sort of all come together and made me want to crawl into a ball and die. But here we are recording another episode of this, and I think I'm recovering now, so I might not be too bad. But again, if I do sound a bit weird, then that's probably why. And on top of my accent that I already have, I know that some of you will be losing your minds right now, but just bear with me and we'll get through this. So, trying new things in your artwork. The reason why I've decided to talk about this today is because I've been trying a few things myself. I've been trying to add colour into the artwork that I've been making. If you've seen the previous video which I put up on the channel, towards the end of that video I did add colour to my work, and if you follow me on Instagram you can see the artwork that I'm talking about. I added some colour over my pencil work in Photoshop, and it was pretty, I like how it turned out. I was sort of like a bit, I don't know, I was doubting it a bit at first, wondering whether colour would really suit my style or my way of drawing, because my way of drawing my drawings are just standard pencil drawings, right? And so adding colour over the top of it might not look too good, but I did it in Photoshop, and I added the colour over the top of the pencil work, and it ended up looking pretty good. And the colours look quite saturated, but I like that because it sort of complements the project that I am working on. The project that I am working on is quite dystopian, and so I think it looks nice with that. It sort of suits it. And I also, in the process of colouring, I also had the black and white layer which I was turning on and off all the time, so that I was able to check the values of the colour. And then in terms of the colours, I was also using some of the tools in Photoshop, like the colour balance, to adjust and manipulate the colours as I went with it, to make sure that I was always selecting colours that looked appealing, because in terms of colour theory I have a lot to learn. I don't really know a lot about colouring, and so I was just sort of going with it. But I think in the end, the result wasn't that bad. I thought it looked quite nice, and it's quite a unique looking piece of work. I haven't really seen any artist that produce work that looks like that, because it has that traditional hand-drawn style underneath the colour, and it looks quite good because the pencil texture is still there, and then this colour, which is applied digitally, is just laid on top of it. And doing all of this, experimenting with this, I feel like as a byproduct of that, this unique style will develop as well. And that's not something I intended on doing, but if that's something that comes with it, then I'll gladly accept that, because who doesn't want a style to their work which is known to them, right? As an artist, it's quite nice to have. It's not essential, and sometimes we place too much importance on it, I think, but having a style is good because people can look at your work and then recognize it as being yours, right? So that's pretty good. But adding colour and just colour in general is something that I'm going to try and take some time to learn. And a lot of the drawings which I do from now on will be coloured and uploaded onto Instagram. But let me talk a bit about this new project of mine before I get into anything else. So this new project, it's something that I've had planned for a while. It's nothing that is too planned out because I don't want to overthink it. It's just something that I'm sort of developing as I go with it. And so these drawings, okay, and I've only done one up to now, which is the one that you are watching in this video. The pencil drawing footage is presented in this episode. So this drawing, which I have now coloured, is the first drawing in this new project of mine. But these drawings take place and are set in this fictional universe, in this imaginary world. And, it's a dystopian world. I haven't really got much of an idea of what I want to involve in it too much yet, but it's my usual style. You can probably have a good guess of what it's going to be like. But I found it quite interesting because a lot of these drawings, I want them to be drawn as if they are drawn in first person, right? So it's almost like I am in this world exploring it, and I am drawing what I see from experience. So I'm just sort of recording my experience in this city, and then I can sort of tell a story, and you get to come along with me on this journey of this fictional world, right? So I thought that was quite a good idea. And then also this idea that sometimes, like, you've probably heard the saying, you live in your own world and stuff. I know that a lot of people have said that to me before, and I thought I'd take that literally, and I'd actually apply it to a project like this. This is my own world that I'm creating, and I'm living in this world, and I'm sort of presenting that to you and showcasing it through these drawings that I am making. And so that is my, intention with it, and that's the overall idea behind it. And so, anyways, moving on from that, in terms of exploring new things with your artwork, like I said, I've been exploring colour, and so that's sort of given me this idea for this episode where I want to talk about the importance of trying out all of these new things, because as artists, it's important to sort of stray away from what you are comfortable using all of the time. And I know that might sound quite quite ironic coming from a guy who only draws in pencil all of the time, but I've tried a few things before, especially when it comes to the second channel, the videos that I'm going to be making for that. I'm going to be very experimental with it. I'm going to be building stuff. I'm not even just going to be drawing. I'm going to be using different mediums and stuff and trying all of these new things, because the reason why I use pencil on this main channel is because I feel like I've sort of created an audience who expect that, and so I want to remain loyal to what it is that I do here. But the second channel allows me to distance myself from that and be a bit more experimental with it. And so, but yeah, trying new things. If we're going to relate it to art, let's talk a bit about the mediums that you use to create art, right? I've tried all of these different mediums before. I haven't tried them recently because I've tried them in the past, like painting, using pen, etching, all of these different ways of creating visual images. And all of these I enjoyed, but they never really appealed to me as much as drawing did, for numerous reasons. When it comes to drawing, I like the control that I have. I like the freedom of using pencil, because using a pencil it allows you to create all of these different results. What I mean is, you can apply more pressure with it to get darker lines, you can apply less pressure to get lighter lines, you can use different grades, you can move it in different ways to create different textures, you can erase it so you can get rid of your mistakes. I mean, how good is that? And yeah, that's probably just a few things that like allows me to appreciate using pencils, right? Whereas if you use pen, for instance, which I used to draw in pen quite a lot back in the day, but using pen, you're sort of restricted to the one line, right? You only have one tone, which is black ink, but then you can also use it in different ways to create different effects and textures, and I know that a lot of people do that. And so I suppose in a way, my sort of, for me to say I don't really enjoy using pen as much as pencil is fair enough, but it might come down to my lacking ability of using pen, so that's probably got something to do with it. I might just feel that way because I feel like I'm not as experienced using pen as I am with using pencil, and so that might be a reason why I feel that way. But I've come to this conclusion because I've tried it before. Again, it's about trying these things. Like with painting has never really appealed to me. I used to do it a bit when I was in school, but again, painting for me, it seems like it needs to be quite loose and expressive, whereas when I use pencil, I can be a lot more controlled and specific, and again, it comes down to personal preference, but at least I know that because I have tried it, and so I can sort of tick these things off and cross these things off the list of what it is that I like and don't like, and I learn a lot about myself as an artist and a creative individual, and as a result, my artwork probably improves a bit because of that, because I have this clarity of what it is that I like and what I don't like, and I have a means of how I want to approach something, because I've tried all of these different ways, different methods, and all of these different mediums. And again, it doesn't just have to be the mediums, I'm talking about trying different ways of creating different things, so it doesn't even have to be drawing. There's all of these different creative fields, and drawing is easy to access as a young kid. There's always like a pencil or on paper lying about. You can always grab that and just create some drawings, and so you can try out drawing. It's easy for you to try it out. But other things like maybe music, that might be a bit harder to access, because you need, for instance, if you're creating like digital music, you need a laptop, you need some software, and so it's not easily accessed, but it's something that you should try and access, and at least try. I know that, like, I'm not saying that I've been making music before, but I kind of have, because I remember when I was in year 7, so I'd have been about 13 years old. And around that time, everybody was into dubstep, right? All of this electronic dance music, and people still are. But back then, I remember, like, all of my friends and everybody in school would listen to it. And so what I did was, young Dan, thinking he knew everything and could do anything, he went online, and I started to download all of these different sound effects and samples, and I started to piece them all together in this software. I think it was just some free software. I actually think it was Audacity, and so I was just importing all of these sound effects and stuff and looping them and trying to create some kind of like music by doing this. And I remember like I had the beat and the drums and stuff, and then some samples in there, and I think I went as far as like making a name for myself and trying to make a SoundCloud account and that to put this music up. But eventually, or thankfully, I came to my senses and I realised that maybe this isn't for me. The music wasn't that good. I think I showed like one person, one of my friends, and he wasn't trying to be mean, but I understood that he didn't really think it was all that good, and so luckily I retired right there and then. But at least I tried it. I was open to it, I tried it, and it probably, in a way, it probably had some influence on my artwork, even though it might not be in an obvious way. It probably did, because I'm open-minded and I've tried all of these different things and different ways of creating. Another one is animation. I remember, and this is not that long ago, I remember in college when I was doing art, I spent pretty much a whole year building this cardboard town. And when I say animation, I'm not talking about digital animation. I'm talking about like stop motion animation, really traditional stuff. But I built this cardboard town with all of the buildings and the trees and, this environment with cars and people, and all of it was constructed out of paper and card. And I spent ages building all of these different things to create this setting for this animation. And so then I built these little police cars and these vans out of paper as well, and I downloaded this app on my phone which allowed me to take different photos and then piece them together to create this stop motion animation. And I remember filming this like police car chase in this paper world that I had created, and it was a little animation that I made. But I enjoyed doing that, but after I did it I was sort of like, well, thankfully that's over with now, and it was never really something that I wanted to pursue further. And I mean, digital animation might have been a different story, but it's something that I tried, and I kind of did do a bit of digital animation when I was little. That program called Flash, that Adobe Flash software. I remember I used to animate a lot of Stickman videos in that, and so that's as close as I get to animation. But again, it's trying these new things and probably just experimenting with the software and going through the process of creating all of these things that feeds into different things that you pursue. And it's like with filmmaking. I've always been interested in filmmaking, and that's probably a reason why I ended up on YouTube, and I've sort of like thrown my interest in drawing and filmmaking together, and I'm making these videos. But who knows, maybe one day I'll stop drawing and turn to just making films. But I mean, that's unlikely, but who knows, like that might be the case. It's hard to predict, but at least I have all of these different avenues, and I can always go down there if I want to and try and improve my abilities in another field. And if I do that, people will probably turn their heads, because a lot of the time, if I find it quite funny, because when it comes to creative people, especially with like musicians and stuff, if an audience sees this musician that they follow try something new, maybe they turn to film or acting, or they try something new, then sometimes they might be quite like negative about that, because this person is known for something and they are suddenly trying something new. People don't like that a lot of the time. They want to sort of like keep you in a box, and that's quite limiting. I never really want to be in that position where I feel like I can only do one thing forever. I want to be open and explore all of these new things, because that's something special, and that's what life is about, right? Experiencing all of these different things. And so you never want to be categorized. You just want to be open to doing all of these things, as long as it appeals to you and appeals to your interests. And usually if you're interested in something, you're going to be pretty good at it, because you'll have the incentive to get better at it, because your interest is there pulling you back towards it, if that makes sense. And yeah, it's important to try these new things, because if you never really try them, then you'll never know. And it's always better to know, even if like the result is you wasn't very good at it and it's not for you. At least you know that. Like, imagine just sticking to doing one thing like all your life and not knowing that you was really good at something else. You had a natural talent in something else, but you never really discovered it because you never put yourself in a space where you was willing to try it, right? And it's like people who don't like various foods, but they've never tried them. They just say they don't like them, but they don't know, because they've never actually tried it, until grandma comes along one dinner and forces them to eat it, and then all of a sudden they realise that they like some kind of this food that grandma has forced them to eat, and now all of a sudden they start eating this food because someone had forced them to try it, but they was not willing to try it themselves. And if grandma wasn't there, they never would have known that they like this food, and that might now be their favourite food. So that's a weird analogy, but you get what I'm saying, right? And yeah, when it comes to drawing as well, even when it comes to like a specific field like drawing, there's sort of like subcategories, right? Because you have drawing which is on top of it, and then you have all these like things that stem off of it, like different kinds of drawing, maybe observational drawing, life drawing, drawing from imagination. All of these things are parts, like all of these are involved in drawing and are things that you should try, because if you try all of the things that are involved in drawing, you will broaden your understanding of drawing overall, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's just something that I thought I'd talk a bit about today, and I'll probably build on this further in future episodes. Going back to my own work, colour is something that I am introducing now, and maybe sometimes I won't colour all of my work. I'm not saying that I'm going to be colouring every drawing that I do from now on, but I'm open to trying it, and I'll definitely, in terms of this new project as well, colour is something that I want to try and involve in it, because I feel like it can really emphasise the aesthetic and what I'm trying to portray in these images. And so, I think I'm going to wrap this subject up here, and we'll move on to today's question, which is from, 1 second, I need to check the question. Today's question is from Pinkman. Okay, that's a good name. Is that from Breaking Bad, Jesse Pinkman? Or maybe your name is Pinkman, who knows? But your question is, how do you manage your social life while working your art? What I mean by that is, how do you work hard on your art creations and manage to not fall into loneliness at the same time? That's a problem many artists seem to encounter at least once in their life. And that's a really interesting question. I actually feel like I should do a full episode just talking about, loneliness and what it takes, sort of like sacrifice. But yeah, thank you for that question, by the way. Also, if you all want to leave some more questions down below, then I'll answer loads of them in the next episode. But let me try and give you some kind of an answer to this question: how to manage your social life whilst pursuing art. And both of those things, when you put them together, it doesn't really sound practical, but it is practical, depending on how much you want to pursue something and how dedicated you are and invested, because there's different levels to it, right? You can pursue art 100% and forget everything else, forget your social life, or you can, create balance and be an average artist, be a okay artist, but also have a great social life, which a lot of people would rather have that. I mean, to be exceptional, you're probably going to have to sacrifice a lot of that social life to be exceptional, but is that a price that's worth paying? Do you know what I mean? It really depends on what it is that you want to do and what you want to be. I mean, if you spend your whole life becoming a master at something, but then as a result you have to sort of sacrifice all of these things, like a family, having close relationships with friends and stuff, then is it really worth it? I don't know. That's something that I think about often, and I've never really been able to come up with an answer, because some days I'm thinking, this is what I want to do, I want to dedicate my life to this, and I don't care what I have to sacrifice along the way. And then sometimes I'm like, no, I need balance in my life, because life is important in terms of influencing your work and just being a better person. You need a good dose of life, and so socializing is a tool in itself. Like, I feel like balance is very underestimated when it comes to being creative and stuff, because a lot of people like to glorify working 24/7, like no social life, this is what I'm doing 24/7 working, all of that stuff. But then, are they really working 24/7, or are they like procrastinating a lot? in that time as well. So I suppose it sort of relates to schedules as well. Like if you're maximizing your time, then you should be able to balance a good social life alongside that. And again, like in terms of influence and inspiration, experiencing other things is really important, and so you shouldn't miss out on that because your artwork will suffer as a result. And so as an individual, you need to test these things out and come up with, first of all, you need to know what it is that you want and what you want to do and what you value in life, and then you need to figure out the best way to sort of go after that, and then figure out what matters to you and what doesn't. And you shouldn't waste your time socializing with people that maybe you'd socialize with if you didn't have anything better to do. You know what I mean? But you do have something better to do. You have your drawing career to pursue. So the people that you are socializing with need to be the people that matter to you the most. I'm sort of going off. I'm sort of like going off in different directions here, but all of it sort of relates back to this question, right? Now, when it comes to loneliness, I'm no stranger to that, and I'm guessing a lot of you listening can relate as well. A lot of the time when somebody hears that somebody is lonely, they might assume that they are unhappy, but that's not always the case. Sometimes, well, as artists, we intentionally do that to ourselves. We decide to put ourselves in a position where we are maybe not interacting with the outside world as much because we value our time that we have to create more than that, right? So we voluntarily do this, and we know the price that we are paying, right? And how we justify that decision is because that the stuff that we create and the stuff that we do fills that void in a sense, and it might not fill it all the way, but it's good enough to justify the decision we made to sacrifice some of our social life in order to create what we want to do, because we gain a lot of satisfaction from doing that. And sometimes that matches up to the satisfaction that we'd gain from socializing with people, or it might be more, who knows, depending if you hate people or not. You might just prefer to stay indoors and create and do what it is that you want to do. And so, and even in loneliness, in solitude, there is a lot of benefit to that. Spending time with yourself, understanding yourself, there's a lot of good that can come from that. It's not as bleak as an person from the outside might view it. Also, in terms of like understanding yourself and spending time with yourself, being isolated, I sometimes feel like that's not the best way to understand yourself, because I always feel like if you go out and socialize with people, then that's when you can really study yourself and understand yourself more, because you have something to bounce off of, right? You have things to interact with. Whereas if you're spending time alone and trying to understand yourself that way, then there's only like a certain viewpoint that's available. Like you can only like study yourself in terms of what you are doing rather than how you are interacting with other people. Interacting with other people is important, right? And that's why I said like life is a big influence on your work. And so if I'm going to give some kind of conclusion, I'd say that it comes down to knowing what it is that you value and what you want in life. If you struggle being alone and your work and what you do when you are alone is not filling that void of loneliness, then you need to question it and figure out whether you really should be spending so much time and putting everything into that, and then sacrificing your social life, because maybe you just need some more balance. So maybe you should try and add some balance into your life if that is the case, and you might be happier that way. I feel like there's no point doing something if you're just going to be miserable doing it all of the time. I'd much rather be happy doing something but maybe not be as good at something, but be happier in general because you get to experience all of these other things. And, you know, we only have one life, so why would you miss out on all of those things? But I suppose it comes down to, you know, personal opinion, what it is that you want to do. And the only way you are going to figure that out is just by putting yourself in a position where you are able to analyze yourself and learn what it is that matters to you. And I mean, you know, we're not that alone. I mean, we have the internet these days. I know it doesn't really do it justice, but it's something, right? And we have that voice in our head that we're always talking to. So, I mean, we are all crazy. We're all talking to a voice in our head. We're just not talking out loud. And I'll just leave it at that. So, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you for your question, Pinkman. Great name. I can't wait for that Breaking Bad film, by the way. I'm a big Breaking Bad fan, so that's something that I'm really looking forward to. El Camino, it should be a good film. But anyways, we'll end this one here. Thank you all for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Drawn to Create, and remember to leave me some more questions down below for the Q&A next week. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.